Namaste again and a warm welcome to all at this winter solstice gathering. Ano bhadraha kritavo yantu vishwataha. Let noble thoughts come from all directions to us. The 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita serves as a profound summation of the entire text. In that sense, today's discourse touches upon the very essence and key ideas of the Gita as a whole. The purpose of this talk is to offer a holistic, end-to-end perspective, an overview not only of the teachings themselves, but of how they may be practically applied in daily life. We shall reflect upon the ultimate goal, the roadmap that leads towards it, and the signposts that guide us along the way. Yet it must be remembered, the path is one that each one of us must walk alone. No one can traverse it on our behalf. This talk will be dense and layered, with certain sections necessarily simplified due to time constraints. It is not intended as a complete exposition, but rather as a snapshot, a glimpse into the depth and richness of the Bhagavad Gita. There is a profound distinction between knowledge and realization. We may grasp and comprehend the truths of life on a theoretical level, yet such understanding remains of little value until we ourselves, through sincere effort, come to realize them directly. No one else can accomplish this on our behalf. Each individual must undertake the journey personally. For students of Bhagavad Gita, many of these ideas may already be familiar, but the true challenge lies in engaging in deep study and meditation, allowing these truths to unfold within one's own experience, and then applying them in life. The following are few seed ideas from the Bhagavad Gita, truths that must be realized and woven into the very fabric of our soul's memory. In this way, across lifetimes, we may consciously build upon the foundation of these realizations, allowing them to guide and shape our journey ever onwards. All of humanity is ceaselessly engaged in the pursuit of happiness, whether through the fleeting allure of sensual pleasures or the subtle quest for mental peace and bliss, ever running after comfort and delight. Even in the simple unconscious act of breathing, were it not accompanied by a trace of pleasure, we would not breathe at all. Yet, this very search becomes the seed of sorrow, for whatever brings happiness is impermanent. Indeed, everything in this world is transient, and thus the chase itself often leads us back to dissatisfaction. Another profound truth of life is this: the next moment may hold breath or death. We can never know. Yet, despite this reality, we often forget and live as though tomorrow is assured, imagining that death will arrive at some distant time, and thus dismissing the need to reflect upon it now. Never in the history of mankind has a newborn entered the world with laughter or smile. The very first act of a child upon birth is to cry. Each time we take birth in human form, we endure nearly 9 months within the mother's womb, immersed in fluids, confined, and undergoing a silent struggle. From the very beginning, life is marked by suffering. Throughout the entire cycle of life, from birth to death, we encounter a succession of joys and sorrows, both physical and mental. Yet Lord Buddha revealed that even happiness, no less than sorrow, is but another form of suffering. In truth, this means that each of us is caught in an unbroken continuum of suffering, ceaselessly woven into fabric of our existence. Why do we suffer endlessly? It is because we are deluded, lost in the deep slumber of ignorance regarding our true nature and reality. As HPB observed, we are ceaselessly deceiving ourselves. Yet, even as we lie in this sleep of unawareness, within each of us rests the latent potential to awaken. Individual spirit or Purusha is said to be the cause of experiencing pain and pleasure. So, how do we remove it? How do we stop that? We need to remove the self-identification and attachment, dissolve all desires and ambitions with knowledge, and perform duty unattached and be free from ever. But there is a problem. Within the heart lies the subtle knot, woven of ignorance, desire, and karma. It binds us, keeping us trapped in suffering, life after life, and gives rise to ever more disharmonious actions, tendencies, tanha, the ceaseless thirst for life that knows no end. How do we untie this knot? It is here that Bhagavad Gita comes to our aid, offering the wisdom and guidance to dissolve the bonds of ignorance and suffering. The Bhagavad Gita is a scripture of yoga, devotion, and initiation. It offers step-by-step guidance to free ourselves from the suffering while still embodied, leading towards liberation to become a Jivan Mukta, that is liberated while alive. Yet the teachings remind us to be cautious. We must apply them here and now, without clinging either to the goal of liberation or to the actions themselves. This is the spirit of sannyasa and tyaga, that is renunciation and detachment. Once that end goal is understood, our task is simply to perform our duty sincerely and without attachment. Whether liberation comes or not is secondary. What truly matters is the honest fulfillment of duty. In truth, you have no higher duty than to realize the self in this very birth. Know this and uplift yourself, becoming better able, wiser, and able to guide, help, and teach others. For the highest duty is this, to act for and as the self of all. But what then prevents us from emerging from this state of suffering, even when all guidance lies before us? One of the central impediments, beyond those already mentioned, is Sakayadati, the delusion of individuality and separateness. How does this delusion take root, and by what means may we free ourselves from it? We must turn inward and deeply contemplate the timeless question, who am I? But the very moment we ask this question, who am I, a vast Pandora's box is opened. Even through the simple reasoning, we can see that the physical body must perish, that the lower quaternary is impermanent. But if reincarnation is real, then the I continues beyond death. Who then am I? We may be inclined to think of this I as the soul, the Atman, for even Buddhi and Manas ultimately dissolve back into the third logos Mahat at the close of the great Mahamanvantara. Adi Shankaracharya, one of the India's greatest esoteric teachers, declared that we are not the body, we are the Atman. He further revealed that there is no such thing as my Atma or your Atma. This insight is transformative. For if I am not this body, and if the Atma is indivisible, then it follows that there is only one Atman, one pure consciousness, reflected in all beings. Yet we fail to realize this truth, because we remain spellbound by Maya, as though hypnotized by illusion. The task before us is to awaken, to dehypnotize ourselves, and to behold the reality that shines through all. So how do we do that? The first step is being free of the body, is to realize that I am not this body. The next step is to know this body is not mine. It is given on loan by Mother Nature. And the third and final step is to know that there is in fact no body. It's just an idea which we think is real. So the ultimate truth is that we are the Atman. We were in fact never born, and hence we shall never die. We are pure consciousness, the witness consciousness. And this should be the basis of all our thoughts, speech, and action. Another way to understand this is the realization that we are none of our bodies, and this is of utmost importance. Here we see successive layers of Prakriti, each one an upadhi, a body, a sheath, a field, a kshetra, in which experience unfolds. In every layer, the false sense of I arises, woven from the threads of gunas and skandhas. Within the mental body, these skandhas crystallize as subtle mental deposits, shaping the self-reproductive patterns of thought and memory. Yet all these upadhis function only by borrowing the radiance of the Atma, the substratum, the witness, the kshetrajna. Without that light, no perception is possible. None of the sheaths or the bodies or koshas will function. The essential truth, therefore, is this: we are not these bodies. We are the witness, untouched by the play of Prakriti. This realization marks the first step, the first turning point, a vital and transformative turning point on the path. The realization of this truth brings a profound stillness to the heart, a sense of inner deadness that leaves behind a lasting impression of the unreality of all that is seen and felt by the self. This awakening precedes the soul's thirst to seek the real, the ultimate truth. The intensity of this longing may differ for each of us, yet it inevitably arises once the realization dawns. Even in the smallest measure, when we truly understand that we are not the body, we enter a further state of disquiet, a passage into a no man's land, an unknown territory where the familiar dissolves and the quest for the eternal begins. But the delusion still continues. Yet we remain bound in delusion, for the instruments we employ, the bodies, our koshas, our vehicles, are tainted and are impure, burdened by countless past lives lived in ignorance. These accumulated tendencies pull us away from truth, reinforcing the powerful chains of illusion again and again. Therefore, the sheets, the subtle bodies, must undergo purification so that the light of the self may shine unobstructed and the vehicles used for their intended purpose may be fit. At the level of Atma, there are no gunas, yet Prakriti is sevenfold, and at each stage, from subtle to gross, the gunas manifest. The first differentiation of Prakriti, where the light of Atman shines, is Buddhi, followed by Manas. But as the gunas intensify and the skandhas accumulate within the upadhi, the pure radiance of Atman becomes increasingly distorted. Gunas in each sheath, that is, each kind or differentiated level of Prakriti, propel thoughts, actions accordingly, unless we rise above them and take charge. Cleaning purification of the skandhas leads to the light of Atman to shine forth and through the upadhi without getting distorted. But the gunas also need to be addressed. Purification of skandhas is not merely a cleansing of tendencies, it is the unveiling of the self by replacing old skandhas with new and depolarizing the old. When the veils are thinned, the light of Atman shines undistorted through the upadhi, revealing the innate radiance. Yet the gunas, like the subtle threads of Prakriti, must also be transcended. For as long as they exist, they bind perception. The eternal light is refracted into multiplicity. True realization lies not only in purification, but in rising beyond and above the play of gunas, where the self is seen as it truly is, unchanging, indivisible, free, and omnipresent. Hence, every thought we take, action we perform, has a definite and potent effect in shaping and altering our skandhas and our future life. Mahatma K.H. says skandhas represent not only a material but also a set of mental and moral qualities, and that even as we live this present life, they are ever and ceaselessly at work in preparing the abstract mold, the privation of the future new being. Hence, every thought and action is either making our sheets pure or impure, leading to harmony or disharmony. Every word we speak causes a vibration in the higher spheres and becomes an entity to plague or bless us. We have seen that every vehicle, every sheath, every body is but temporary, a mere instrument. What alone endures is the Atman. This is the yoga of self and non self, and it demands a clear and unwavering realization. One must meditate deeply upon the timeless question, who am I? And then arises the profound inquiry. If I am the Atman, never born, never to die, then who is it that takes birth? We must reflect deeply upon this. It is the mind that experiences the entirety of life. All realizations are carried forward, stored across life's time within the Karana Sharira, also known as the Sutratma. In truth, everything unfolds only within the mind. Just as the mind projects dreams in sleep, so too does it project the so called waking state, which is itself but another dream. When the projections, the vrittis of the mind, cease or subside, one enters Shushupti, the state of deep sleep. Yet beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep lies the substratum in which all these states arise and dissolve. That eternal ground is Turiya the fourth, the state of Atman, the witness, the reality beyond all appearances. We must inquire deeply and try to understand how does the sense of I arise. But before attempting to answer that question, let us turn to an analogy. Imagine a dark room, its walls, ceilings, floor covered in non-reflective black paint, with no object within the room. Even if a source of light is present, nothing can be seen. Only when an object with a reflective surface is introduced does the light and the object reveal itself. Also, let us consider a profound allegory of the Mundaka Upanishad. Upon the sacred tree of existence dwell two birds. The eternal wise bird sits upon the upper branch, radiant with a halo of light, serene and unmoving. From its presence, a projection arises again and again, life after life, manifesting as the lower bird. This lower bird forgets of its source, becomes absorbed in the red fruits of desire. It flits restlessly from branch to branch, tasting pleasure and pain, bound to the cycle of birth and death. Yet one day, weary of its wandering, the lower bird lifts its gaze upward. Beholding the luminous companion above, it ceases to feed upon the fruits of craving. With effort and aspiration, it ascends, drawing nearer to the upper branch, until at last it merges into the wise bird, discovering that the two were never truly separate, but one self all along. Here we discern the twofold nature of the mind. The higher aspect, the Buddhi Manasik, is akin to the eternal wise bird, serene, luminous, and ever aware. The lower aspect, the Kama Manasik, mirrors the restless bird, ever chasing the red fruits of desire. Between these two lies the bridge, the Antakarna, the subtle link that unites the higher and the lower, the very passageway of consciousness. Think of this antakarana, this mind, as the dark room we have just spoken of. It is the kshetra, the field, where thoughts arise, live for a moment, and then dissolve. Each thought is but an object in this field, and with its arising comes Maya, the veil of illusion. Yet the mind itself perceives nothing without the light of the Atman. Only when the radiance of the self shines upon it does the mind take the shape of the object and perceive. But here a subtle distortion occurs. The reflected light gives rise to the false notion of I. Thus we say, I see, I think, I understand. This reflected light is called the Jivatman. Desires too are such objects, ceaselessly arising, binding the mind in delusion. Let us note, however, that perception in the mind is conditioned by its quality, shaped by the gunas and skandhas that dwell within it. Since all experience unfolds in the mind, and since the mind is the instrument through which the higher states of consciousness are attained, the refinement of this instrument is essential. This refinement is achieved through chitta shuddhi, the purification of the mind, by which the mirror of consciousness is cleansed, allowing the light of self to shine undistorted in the true original state. Hence, achieving chitta shuddhi, that is mind purification, is of highest priority. Bhagavad Gita provides 5-step approach to purify the mind. Karma yoga, performance of duty unattached. Realization of paravairagya, dwelling constantly on the higher self. Bhakti yoga and sattvic food, wherein the fifth aspect of food builds our mind. So if the food is pure and sattvic, the mind becomes pure and sattvic. B.P. Wadia provides this important quote: in the present cycle, our minds are separated from compassion and our ethical impulses are prompted more by our psychic than by our spiritual nature. Purification of mind is the removal from it of the psychic impressions and karmic influences. This is the first task. All this may be understood in principle, but the deeper question remains: how in practice do we cultivate vairagya, true disaffection? There are 4 progressive stages known as apara, the relative forms, yet beyond them lies the supreme state, paravairagya, the highest realization. The journey begins with the disengagement of senses from action, freedom from attachment to experience. Next arises the restraint of desire, born of knowledge and contemplation of the impermanence of all things. Third stage is stilling of the mind, directing it steadily, continuously towards the higher thoughts. The fourth is the complete liberation from cravings and desires through wisdom attained. These 4 constitute the upper level, the preparatory stages of dissipation. When these are mastered, one ascends to paravairagya, a state where even thoughts themselves no longer bind. Here one observes thoughts as they arise, renounces them at will, and discards the unnecessary. At last one perceives the subtle interval between the silent gaps between the thoughts. In this state, one becomes a renouncer not merely of objects but of thoughts itself. Such realization is no small attainment. It demands immense effort, perhaps across many lifetimes, yet it is the path by which the mind is purified. The realization of paravairagya marks the second great turning point upon the path. When this state is fully attained, dissipation ripens into boundless compassion. For in transcending attachment, the heart awakens to the suffering of all beings, and the self, free from craving, flows naturally into universal love. How to develop bhakti? Here, we see the preconditions and qualifications for treading the path of bhakti. Without these foundations, the journey is in vain, for the desired fruits of devotion cannot be attained. Only when the heart and mind are appropriately prepared does the path of bhakti unfold into true promise, surrender to the divine through love and compassion. And then, once the necessary preconditions have been fulfilled, we begin to walk upon the path of bhakti. We encounter 9 progressive stages. These stages are not mere practices, but inner unfoldments, gradual refinements of the heart and mind, realizations through which love for the divine deepens, matures, and ultimately culminates into union in form of complete surrender. But why Bhakti Yoga? Lord Krishna says there is no purifier in this world to be compared to spiritual knowledge. And he who is perfected in devotion, that is Bhakti Yoga, findeth spiritual knowledge springing up spontaneously in himself in the progress of time. But there is a side effect of complete purification of the mind. And this leads to the third turning point upon the path. When the mind becomes clear and stainless like a mirror, the light of the self shines unobstructed and consciousness itself undergoes transformation. This leads to supreme bliss, identification with Brahman, realizing the self in all and all things in the self, and one becomes Ratambara, as mentioned in the Patanjali Yoga aphorisms, that is Nirvichara. Nirvichara is when even the subtlest movements of thought ceases. The object is subtle, but the mind is utterly still, without inquiry or analysis. This is the state that leads to nirvichara, the clarity that reveals the sattvic state of the mind itself. But what is the side effect of reaching this stage? This marks the fourth great turning point upon the path. Here the seeker becomes a jnani and awakens the heart center, the hridaya. As this center is activated, both the physical and the astral bodies fall into trance, and the disciple abides in the Karana Sharira, the causal body. From this state arises complete compassion, for the heart overflows with peace and bliss. It is here that the first initiation takes place. The current of energy flowing from the heart expands in volume and force, deepens with every step of devotion and self renunciation. The disciple discovers that true knowledge is inseparable from compassion, and that the awakened heart is both the gateway and the ground of liberation. Here we discern that the Karana Sharira is none other than Buddhi itself, the luminous faculty of higher wisdom. Thus, the aspirant, in his inner ascent, abides in the Karana Upadhi, that is the causal sheath, within the wisdom of wherein the wisdom of the self begins to shine forth. To dwell in this state is to live in the subtle ground of consciousness, beyond the turbulence of mind, rooted in the clarity of the pure wisdom. He becomes a jnani, and the state of jnani is as follows. He realizes he is none of his bodies. He has first-hand experience of oneness with nature, comes out of the delusion of separateness, assumes the witness position. There is no impact by Maya. He realizes he is not the doer and reaches the heights of Karma Yoga, Vairagya, Bhakti Yoga, and Raja Yoga. And mind purification with purification of other sheets is accomplished. That's when we can say that he is able to attune his heart and mind to the great mind and heart of all mankind. The Jnani remains established in the highest thought of the attributeless by identifying the self with that. Now, we cannot achieve this chitta shuddhi or mind purification from day one. Hence, in this journey, we have to perform Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga, which is propelled by Bhakti Yoga, based on the foundation of Karma Yoga. Hence, all the yogas need to be practiced simultaneously. Next, the disciple becomes a Gunatita, that is, rises above the gunas. He also becomes a Sthita Prajna by forsaking every desire, having equal mindedness, control over senses, absence of personality, having inner peace, and confirmed in spiritual knowledge. The next stage leads to complete surrender to the higher self, wherein there is full reliance on the higher self, complete trust on the law of karma, to accept whatever happens, good or bad, as the blessing of the Lord, and complete identification and harmony with the higher self. This leads to the second initiation, wherein the physical body and other bodies are purified, and his astral body becomes a perfect mirror reflecting the one life. He becomes passion proof. Spiritual will is activated, and the personal self is killed, and the astral is reduced to a cipher. Astral cosmic center becomes Tejasa, as mentioned in Mandukya, and higher Kundalini is activated. Third initiation takes place. Now he finds that all the six great Shaktis which are developed in him are but manifestation of the one self, the divine life. When all the sounds, portals, and paramitas are aligned to that frequency in us, then we have the six forces also aligned. Hence, we finally attune ourselves with the whole and become one with the all. The next stage, this fourth stage, may be considered a prelude to a minor reflection of the final and seventh stage of initiation, in which the individual must undergo through the trial of identification with all the spheres of being. To complete the full initiatory cycle, therefore, demands the awakening and strengthening of all seven human principles. The candidate must have so tuned his seven-stringed lyre, so energized it with spiritual harmony, that it will vibrate in perfect synchrony with the spiritual essence of the seven principal or spheres of the cosmos. Here his frequency is in harmony with the music of spheres. In the fifth initiation, the initiate meets his own higher self or the ray. This degree was called by the Greeks theophany, a word signifying divine appearance or showing forth of a divinity. The sixth initiation was consummated as the inevitable course of events following upon the successful spiritualization of the entire nature. This was called Theopneusty by the Greeks, wherein all the 49 fires are cleansed and become pure and attuned. Then comes the seventh, the last of the degrees of initiation before masterhood or Nirmanakaya is achieved. This initiation usually took place in winter solstice or at the time of winter solstice. It is said in the seventh degree, the neophyte passes the portals of the sun. He becomes, for a passing moment, the wondrous watcher himself. The solar initiation is complete, and then the neophyte dies, and the Hierophant is born. Just to summarize the three steps, the three higher states in man must be awakened, and the three seats of life and activity must be attuned. And how does this happen? Like the voice says, let the fiery power retire into the innermost chamber, and the chamber of the heart and the abode of the world mother. Then from the heart that power shall rise to the sixth, the middle region, and then beyond to the third. So we see everything is happening in the mind itself. The mind itself is the path, the sevenfold path, wherein the paramitas are arising, the portals are there, and Bhagavad Gita provides a step-by-step guidance for the journey. But in this journey, for with every effort of will towards purification and unity with that, one of the lower ray breaks, and the spiritual entity of man is drawn higher and ever higher to the ray, that supersedes the first, until from ray to ray the inner man is drawn into the one and the highest being of the parent sun. So we see the one self animates all forms of every kind, that the sustaining power as well as the perceiving power is with each and every form. We all are that one self, one pure consciousness. This is the final truth. But if this is too complicated and confusing, then all we need to do is take life seriously to perform our duties. However, do not take it personally, always be unattached. Lead the life necessary for acquisition of such knowledge and powers, and wisdom will come to you naturally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vikash.